The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome. It's Tuesday, March 19th, 2019, and this is our kickoff call for the 2019 Leadership Lessons from Berkshire Hathaway workshops that we'll be doing as a part of the annual meeting weekend coming up in early May. I'm really excited. This is Phil Terry speaking. I will be seeing most of you in Omaha and welcoming you to this great town and to the really terrific lessons to be learned from Buffett, Munger, and Berkshire Hathaway. I'm going to be introducing today our speaker, Karen Goracke, who is the president and CEO of Borsheims. And I'll introduce her in just a moment. Let me pause a second. The slides in the background seem to be doing something crazy. Brittany, are we okay here?
We're good.
Okay. All right. So I guess the slideshow's begun. Okay. So there's going to be a slideshow going in the background that about Borsheims, which is one of the largest jewelry retailers in the country. So I'm going to say a few words about Borsheims and about the workshop in May, and then I'm going to give a little bit more of an introduction to our wonderful speaker. We are so lucky today to have Karen Goracke, President and CEO of Borsheims. So one of the largest jewelry retailers in the country, 40% of their business year-round is actually out of state. The company, Borsheims, was purchased by Warren Buffett back in the 1980s and was part of what Buffett then called the Sainted 7+1, a group of great companies with great brands and great customer experiences. Think See's Candies was one of those, for those of you who know that terrific brand, that played a big role in helping Berkshire become the behemoth that it is today. We'll say more about this in May, but you know, when Berkshire bought Borsheims and earlier See's and Nebraska Furniture Mart and several others, these companies had great management teams, great culture, great customer experiences, and great profitability. And the profitability from these businesses helped to power and turn Berkshire into what it is today. Today, Berkshire has $250 billion in revenue, is by in the world. In fact, the top 5 companies in the world, Apple, Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, Berkshire, and then Facebook. All of those companies started in the 1990s. Apple, you know, started obviously in 76, but it rebooted in the 90s after almost failing, except for Berkshire. Goes much further back than that. And while Facebook talks about move fast and break things, Buffett moves slowly and finds well-run companies that he doesn't want to break, with a great customer experience and a management that he trusts, and slowly but surely, over 50+ years, has built one of the top companies in the world. On the day of our workshop in Omaha, on Friday, May 3, when we'll be talking about the culture and leadership lessons to be learned from Buffett and Munger, the CEOs of the Berkshire companies, there's about 80 of them, will be in their own private meetings, kind of council-like meetings that day with the other CEOs, learning and sharing and helping each other. That evening, Friday night, is actually the big Borsheims cocktail party. Thousands come. It's actually, I believe, one of the largest cocktail parties in the world. There's like 12,000 people at this thing, at this one of the largest retail jewelry retailers in the country. There's a bar and cocktails with appetizers, all which will be available to any shareholder with their badges, and you will all have badges. They serve something like 20,000 meatballs at this thing, and we'll probably talk more about that. But let me tell you a little bit about Karen Goracke. So I've gotten to know Karen over the last couple of years, and I've just been really deeply impressed. I was introduced to Karen by Sam Taylor. Sam was the CEO of Oriental Trading, another one of the Berkshire Hathaway companies. Sam and I had been friends for 20 years. We had met in the early days of the dot-com era, and had stayed in touch. And Sam, many of you knew Sam, he was a council member. And it was actually Sam and I that kind of brainstormed putting together a workshop in Omaha that would bring internet CEOs and internet leaders who are passionate about the customer experience to come to Omaha to learn about Buffett, Munger, Berkshire Hathaway, Borsheims, because most people think of Buffett as an investor, and of course he's one of the greatest of all time. But he's also much, much more than that. Sam sadly passed away a year ago from glioblastoma at age 56. It broke my heart and the heart of many of our friends. But his spirit lives on, and it's certainly, you know, one of the gifts that Sam gave me as he introduced me to Karen Goracke. Karen grew up in South Omaha. She's an Omaha born and bred. Age 18, have all done really well. Two are like CEOs, one's a VP at a large company, and one's like a stay-at-home mom with genius kids that she homeschools. Her first job out of college was actually at Borsheims. She worked there for several years, did well, but then took time off 6 years for her family and returned. Now, often in business, when women take time off to raise their children, they have to pay what is sometimes called the mommy tax. My sister went through this. And they did not, you know, they were not able to re-enter the workforce. You know, their career was derailed. But that's not how Borsheims works. That's not how Berkshire Hathaway works. Karen returned and then eventually was named in 2013 president and CEO by Buffett. We've had, including culture of asking for help and collaboration, have been terrific. So with that introduction, Karen, first of all, thank you so much for coming. It means so much to have you with us today, spending some of your precious time to talk to Collaborative Gain and these leaders who are going to be coming out to Omaha in May.
Thank you very much, Phil, for the great introduction and asking me. It's been a real pleasure to get to know you, and you were kind enough to speak to my sales team and kind of take us through an example of some of the things you do at Collaborative Gain. So yeah. I really have appreciated our friendship as well. So it's been very nice to get to know you.
Thank you. That's very kind. Let's start. Can you give us a thumbnail on the history of Borsheims? You know, sort of where it's come from, because it has a long history, and what it's become today.
Yes, actually, in 2020 we will be celebrating our 150th year in business. So I know it's really an incredible story. So it began in 1870 with Louis Borsheim, and he purchased the store, or started the store, and it really was because Omaha was a railroad town at the time, and so there was a lot of industry booming around that, and this was a natural extension. They also served as like an official watchmaker capacity to make sure that the railroads were running on time. So that was kind of their first roles. And so with that, you know, he set up a nice business. They moved around downtown a few times to different locations. And then really in 1947, the Friedman family stepped in and purchased the store. And that's really kind of where it got brought into the modern era of retail. The Friedmans really had a phenomenal philosophy of doing business. They ran it as a cash business, which is very unusual in the jewelry industry, and they really look to offer this extensive inventory, provide this outstanding customer service price for their customers. And they were able to do this through their cash buying, which gave them discounts that other retailers were not able to meet. So it was really a great way to really modernize the store and our approach to growth.
Yeah, that's it's really. And can you just say just a few words about the Friedman family? I mean, it's an amazing story, right? Like from Russia through Latvia, finally to Omaha, and the kind of people that they were.
Correct. And the Blumkin family that owned the Nebraska Furniture Mart, Mrs. Friedman, Rebecca and Rose were sisters, And so Rose Blumkin and her family started the Nebraska Furniture Mart, and then Rebecca and Lewis started Borsheim's. And they sort of ran this very similar philosophy of how they were going to develop their businesses. So through this incredible product selection, and the store in Omaha for the Furniture Mart is about a mile long. It is incredible. It is, I mean, if you can't find what you're looking for, you can't find it anywhere. The Nebraska Furniture Mart is amazing. They also follow that same philosophy of exceptional customer service and great pricing. So we're kind of running on similar parallel universes, as you would say, just different product.
Yeah.
That was through the sisters, actually, I think drove a lot of that in the beginning.
Well, when we get together in May, I'll talk a little bit more about the Nebraska Furniture Mart and the famous Rose Blumkin, who, and why is it that at age 99, Warren Buffett insisted she sign a 20-year non-compete?
Yeah, Rose was definitely a much bigger personality than Rebecca. Mrs. F, as we called her, was very calm and quiet, and Rose was the exact opposite, a very big, outgoing personality. So it was interesting to see that dynamic between the two sisters too.
Yeah, remarkable family. So now let's talk about you. So, you know, what happened? How did you do this? So you started as a sales associate in 1988. I think I have that year correct.
Right.
And then in 2013, you were appointed president and CEO. Can you walk us through that career journey, including the fact that you took time off and were able to come back? And you know, you've got an 85% women company here. And you know what? Tell us a little bit about yourself and then about that culture you have at Borsheim's.
You know, I think that for me, I really had graduated from college. I had no idea what I was going to do with myself. You know, I just knew I was going to be wildly successful, and I was expecting to find this super great job and move to New York City and do all these things that you dream about. And so my father just encouraged me to get a job, and then kind of make my bigger game plan later on after I had a little bit of money under my belt. So I sort of looked around and I said, you know, where would be the most glamorous and really the kind of atmosphere that I would find interesting? And so I thought, you know, I'm going to go look at Borsheim's. And I was lucky enough to get hired right away as a gift sales associate. And so that's kind of where I started, was selling, you know, china and flatware and silver trays and things that were very fashionable back in the 80s. Yeah, exactly.
Did you have big hair, Karen? Did you have big hair?
I have very, very big hair, and I should have put some of those pictures in there because my hair was enormous. But you know, I think that I must have asked the right questions, and so I really moved in kind of to be a sales support or support for the buyers. So I started like writing purchase orders and faxing and doing some things, and really began to really question a lot of the business practices of Borsheim's. I mean, this was a very ethical company. I don't want it to make it sound like it wasn't at all. It was run very differently than what I had read in textbooks in college. And so things like the whole inventory, I mean, here they had tens of millions of dollars of inventory, and basically I would sit at a counter and add up the inventory with a 10-key calculator. And that was, you know, their inventory system. And so I really began asking a lot of questions and asking the buyers, like, how do you know what to buy? Like, if you don't even know what you sell, because there's no reporting, there's no sense of any sort of business. You know, I thought not that I was really involved in the accounting practices, but I just had a lot of questions, like, how do how do you run an audit? How do you, and they're like, we don't run audits. There's no such thing as an audit. So it was just really a different way of looking at business, and they were wildly successful. You know, so I didn't really have room to criticize the way it was run, because they were a very successful business.
And by the way, can I add that, just to add for the listeners, that, you know, to the point of there being no audit, when Buffett bought the business, I think it was late '88, early '89, something like that, I guess, when that transaction happened. He actually asked to see no audit. He did not ask for an inventory check. He just said, I trust these people so much that I just, you know, it was a handshake deal, right? And he never regretted that. You know, and that speaks to what you're saying. But then, you know, here you are asking some, I think, obviously important questions about how do we grow this business and how do we run it in a way that will help us do that.
Right, and I think that has always been Warren's philosophy in businesses. Warren isn't looking to throw life support to any sort of business, or to say, you know what, let me come in and run this better for you.
Right.
You know, he will even admit he pays a premium sometimes for the companies that he chooses to buy or invest in, because he wants them to be well run. And to help grow them is much, I think, for him, a smarter bet than trying to gamble on a company that's not well run, and thinking you can turn it around. So in that part, I think he's got a philosophy and he sticks to it, and obviously it's worked out really well for him.
Yeah. And can I ask you a question, Karen? Because let's spend a moment and talk about Buffett, and then come back, because I want to come back to your career arc, because it's so important. But let's just, since we're talking about Buffett for a moment, just for the listeners again, most of whom, you know, are not longtime shareholders or have studied the company. You know, you talk a little bit about the way he operates and how he thinks. So Berkshire owns 70 to 80 businesses. I mean, we're talking from Burlington Northern to Fruit of the Loom to Geico to See's Candies to Borsheim's, Nebraska Furniture Mart, Oriental Trading, and so on. Most people do not realize, Karen, how Berkshire works and the wide degree of autonomy given to each of the operating units. As you were saying, you know, when he buys a company, he's not looking to like fix it or become the manager or think he can run it better. He wants companies that are already well run. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what's it like to have Warren Buffett as a boss? For example, do you have to run budgets by him? You know what I mean? Like, how does this company work?
Right. So I was actually working at the store. I started at the store in 1988, and in 1989 is when the purchase happened.
Yeah.
And so we are celebrating our 30th year under the Berkshire Hathaway umbrella, which is fantastic. I know. It's, you know, Warren's been you know, the main player in all of this throughout those 30 years. So I guess for me, looking at this, you know, both as a CEO and a non-CEO, I think what I admire most about him is really the confidence that he gives his managers. That's what he calls CEOs or managers. You know, he really relies on them to make the best decisions. And so I don't run, you know, my annual budget past him, but I do sort of, if I'm doing, like, for example, this year we're implementing a new ERP solution. So why wouldn't I use the resources at Berkshire to kind of help guide me make a decision?
Yeah.
So ultimately the decision is mine, but you have the support there of being able to ask people from across different industries and in the same industry that you're in, you know, what works, how does this work? So there is a lot of autonomy in really running the business. I mean, it really is your business to run. But you sort of have that backup umbrella, I would say, of support for when you do need it or when you do have questions. So, you know, I think from his perspective, he just is really asking you to lead. He's asking you to make the decisions, make the choices, develop your staff, and really present your company in the best light that you can. It is a reflection on him, so that my actions, you know, have an impact on his reputation, and how the Berkshire culture is made up. And I think, you know, that's, to me, what's really interesting is in meeting these CEOs, you kind of get a sense that they're cut from the same cloth. That there's a lot of similarities between us when you talk to people, and you know, their values, their personal values. You sort of see how that is also part of his selection process, is that he has to have a comfort with the manager and what's happening.
Yeah. I have a question for you about that. Before I do, though, let me say to the people listening live with us that I'd love to have you ask questions. You can do it in the GoToWebinar control panel. There's a so type in a question. And if I can, I'll bring it up at that moment, or I'll wait to bring it up to later in the conversation. But one question, Karen, can you sort of give us a little bit more detail? This is a really important point you're making about, you know, as you yourself meet some of the other CEOs, whether it's, you know, very different companies like Burlington Northern or Geico. Tony Nicely, you know, is amazing. He's retired now, but, you know, or someone like Sam Taylor, or of course your colleagues across the way at the Nebraska Furniture Mart, or that there's something very similar about all of you. Can you tell us more? Like tell us what are those similarities, if you can, if you have any examples or something comes to mind that'll help us imagine what you mean.
You know, I think part of it is this detail to ethics and this sense of ethics. You know, Warren has this great saying, and I'm going to paraphrase it. You know, don't ever do anything that you wouldn't want your family, and I think about this with my kids, to read about in the paper. And I know it sounds like oversimplistic, but I think it is really a great beacon to look towards all the time. Is, you know, what I'm doing, am I proud of the decisions I'm making? Am I comfortable within my own, you know, sense of ethics? Does it meet my standards, which then in turn should meet Berkshire standards? And I think that's kind of one of the, like I said, when you meet the other CEOs, you sort of get that sense of things. And also, you know, the feeling of collaboration, I think is really great. So I'm going to admit, I don't talk to those insurance guys a whole lot, because their business is so vastly different. They're lovely people. But really, I can talk to Jim Weber at Brooks Running Shoes and ask him questions about his digital campaigns. You know, there's just really there's no question you can't ask somebody. And even though our businesses are very different, I think there is so much to learn from each other. And that is I think that sort of sense is really put out there. Like, it's okay to ask the questions. It's okay, you know. And they actually set up all these little sub cultures or sub support groups. So, like, there's an IT group, and there's an e-commerce group, and there's a purchasing group, and there's a shipping group. So I mean, people that just that are shipping things can all meet together. They can negotiate the contracts together. They can talk about best practices. I mean, they just really do a great job of creating these cultures to discuss these things and really learn from each other.
And what I love about, obviously, as you know, I'm sort of attempting to create a version of that, you know, across, you know, with leaders in the councils community, where they, you know, really can practice the art of asking for help and be open with each other. But one of the things I love about the Berkshire culture is that there's no mandate that you have to work together across these companies. It's, if you want to, here's some things to do that you can do, right? But Karen, they don't tell you have to go purchase, you know, a certain thing because everyone else is purchasing it, right? Like, again, you're the leader of your own business.
Absolutely. And, you know, it is never mandated. But it is kind of expected that you do use the resources at hand to make the best decision.
Yeah.
Not that that's written anywhere, but of course, why wouldn't you? You know, I mean, you have hands-on access to 80 experts out there that will pick up your phone call, and so it's, why wouldn't you utilize that?
Yeah. Let me bring in there's a couple of questions, and I'm going to bring them in, and then but I do want to circle back again to you and the 85% women culture in your career arc. This is very important. But before we go, Madison, excuse me, Desiree, I'm going to unmute you if we can here, and see if you can ask your question directly. Desiree, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi, Phil.
Wonderful. So Karen, Desiree is wonderful. She works at Airbnb. She runs CX, customer experience design and improvement programs there in the Bay Area, and will be coming out with us to Omaha in May. So Desiree, what question do you have for Karen?
I actually have two, but they're all around performance management. I was wondering, Karen, about your philosophy of your people management and how you manage performance, as well as in my particular area, what, if anything, do you measure in terms of your customers' happiness, satisfaction, or loyalty? So you can do either or both. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful.
So centering around goals, I think what we sort of really try to emphasize is that the goals are in alignment with each other. So the projects that marketing is working on should be the projects that buying is working on, should be the projects that e-commerce is working on, should be the projects that IT is working on. So really making sure that everyone is aware of each other's goals and sort of coming to an agreement that you're going to support those goals as best you can. And if you can't, why that might not be the best time for the goal. So really, I think it's a difficult thing to do, to really look across all departments and make sure that they're all feeding into each other. I think, you know, as roles change and things start to blur, you know, is e-commerce, is it a marketing tool? Is it a buying tool? Is it an IT tool? Like what is it? Obviously it's a sales tool, but it does so many other things. So as you're looking at these departments, really they're playing multiple roles, and you really have to make sure that across those departments they're really feeding into each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think Karen, and you guys might be in transition around this. When we spoke last, and I talked to your team, and we talked about customer experience, I think we were exploring things, or you are exploring things like net promoter scores or other kinds of methods. Is that right? Where is that at now? And if you don't know or don't want to answer, that's fine. But
no, we launched we're launching a new customer service satisfaction program this year, and looking to really increase data that's coming into that, so we can really examine the scores a little bit better. I think, you know, finding the right tool is essential. So I think we're on the right track with that. And then really, you know, tying all these goals, you know, into everyday performance, so that every single employee that we have is really tied and linked to the goal, can really see themselves, you know, participating in the goals.
Yeah. You know, I have a thought, by the way. I know Adrian is with you, your head of marketing. It might be interesting to get Desiree and Adrian together on the phone to just swap some stories, because Desiree is a great leader in customer experience, and she helped put together the whole Customer Experience Professionals Association. And I bet they might have a good conversation. I'll follow up after this today to see if they want to talk to each other. That would be great. All right, so let's now move. We'll come back to the Buffett, you know, and the culture in a moment, but let's get back to you and your career evolution. So you started there in '88, and you started sharing with us that you were asking questions. Hey, wait a minute, you know, we actually don't know our inventory. How are we handling this? So, yeah.
I was saying that, Berkshire doesn't really put in a lot of mandates or change things very much. But the one thing that they did come back and say is like, you have to have better business controls. And, we have to be able to go through audits. You're a publicly held company now. So now, some of these rules have changed. And so I got assigned to the task of the inventory and how do you make it accountable? How do we, have a really controlled inventory system? So that's really sort of what changed my, I think, career path here from just being a job I got out of college to really looking forward to an exciting project and, an expanded role in the company.
Yeah.
So from that, I mean, really you had to look at, having nothing is classifying inventory. And what would people want to know about the inventory, kind of working backwards from kind of what is the end game. And because we had no direction on this, or, help on this. So really starting from ground zero and sort of imagining, that was part of my job, is imagining what you wanted this inventory system to do after the fact. And from there, I really worked, once we had data, I was like, okay, what kind of reports do you want? And they're like, what are you talking about? What's a report? How would I use this? And so really looking at, analyzing margins and turnover cycles and all kinds of aspects of the inventory. I view inventory as like little worker bees, and you kind of want to see, who's producing, who's doing what could be better, what happens when I move product from point A to point B, what happens when I buy more, what happens when I buy less. All those sorts of things is just really dissecting that inventory. Then from there, the watch buying position became open, so I took that and kind of held on to that for a few years until 1998. I had my second son and decided that my husband was, I shouldn't say, I always say I put him through law school, but really he put himself through law school. But I held a job while he went to law school. And then once he started his career, he was working like insane hours and really trying to work up to make partner. And so it was kind of this decision of, some things at home probably weren't running as smoothly as they should have. And so I made the difficult decision to step away from my career and stay home with my kids. So a little unpopular at times, I would say. Some people think, that it's sort of insulting to women and, we should be able to manage this all. And, but I guess I really didn't worry about that too much. I thought that I was making the best decision, what was right for me and for my family. And so went on to have a third son and really maintained my relationship with the store though. I had worked for 10 years. I had a lot of friends at the store, and just because I wasn't working there didn't mean that you severed all those ties. So there was a lot of opportunity for me. I'd come in with the kids and we'd visit, and I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to come back. So was at a soccer game, and Susan Jocks, who was the CEO at the time, was there, and she asked me if I'd be interested in coming back. My youngest son was, I think, 4 at the time, so he was starting preschool, and so I agreed to come back on a part-time basis. And that lasted about a month, I think. And then I full-time, and when I stepped away, I tried to work part-time somewhere. I thought, well, maybe if I wasn't so invested in the work, it would be easier for me to work. But it was the opposite was true for me. I hated it, and I thought, if you're not passionate about what you're doing, then why are you doing it? So that was sort of a disaster for me. And so I just didn't do any, you know, I shouldn't say I didn't do anything. I was a room mother. I did a lot of things. I volunteered a lot, did some great things with my kids, and it was time well spent.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, I love the story. And about a month ago, Karen, we had, so that, you know, this is confidential and I can't go into too many details, but we had the president of NPR, who's a council member, with us talking about the sexual harassment crisis that NPR had a year ago, that she was in charge of responding to, and how are they shaping that culture. And of course, this has rocked Hollywood, it's rocked Silicon Valley, and it's continuing to reverberate. You have an 85% women culture. You stepped away for 6 years, then came back and you were eventually appointed president and CEO. Do you think can you tell us a little bit about the culture there? What's it like? What kind of a CEO are you? And I'd be happy to have Adrian jump in and share a little bit about what it's like to work for you, if you're open to that, and what that culture is like. Because I want people to get a sense. I mean, it's really, really interesting. You guys are passionate about your customers, but you're also passionate about your employees. And you've created something really special in the middle of the country here. And I'd love for you to say a little bit more about that, about the culture.
You know, Phil, I did a little bit of thinking about this when you had this as a question, and you know, I really started thinking about, you know, really I've been in a predominantly female environment my entire life, until I had my kids, who are all boys, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
I had 3 really vocal sisters and a very quiet younger brother, and kind of grew up, you know, and my mom was a very strong person, you know, went to college and lived with, you know, all these great girls, and really kind of created this separate world, you know, within college with these girls, and really just had a great environment of, you know, supporting each other, encouraging each other, helping each other get through classes, you know. And then I come to work for this company that is predominantly female, and, you know, how lucky for me to have this really supportive environment.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I don't really always think of people in terms of male and female. A lot of times I think just more, who is the person? And so, you know, as I look forward, you know, to raising these 3 young men, and, you know, what is their role like, and you know, what is my legacy to them? And I think a lot about that, about, you know, don't think of people, you know, let's face it, men and women are different. Sometimes I put this out there and some people roll their eyes about it, but we really are. And, you know, to me, I celebrate those differences, and think it's really an interesting dynamic. You know, my kids watch soccer all day long, and I like to go shopping on Saturdays sometimes. So, you know, we have these separate lives, but yet we live very well together and learn from each other. So I think, I'm sort of getting off topic here a little bit, but going back to the company, I think it's, you know, to have this environment where I think that as women, we are very supportive of each other, and there isn't an eye roll when you say, I have to leave early so I can hit my kid's soccer game, or I'm driving carpool this week, I'm going to be late every morning. You know, you have this environment where that's not only tolerated, it's encouraged. That's been a great way and a great example, you know, to create this mythical work-life balance. But I think we try to do a very good job of creating an environment that supports that.
Yeah. When I interviewed you for my book, as you know, and most people on the phone know, I have a new book coming out on the art of asking for help, the leadership art of asking for help. And you said in our interview that you do not believe it's your job to know everything, which, you know, I think theoretically most CEOs more or less believe, but you don't see as many practicing it. And we had this wonderful conversation with Adrian, your head of marketing, who said, you know, when she started her career, she worked at a company that was very much like I'm going to say this, Adrian didn't say it, very male dominated, old school financial services. You did not ask for help. I don't know, Adrian, are you comfortable sharing that story? I think it was so funny. Yeah.
No, and so I have a little bit of a yin and yang experience. I started my first job out of college, and where I saw myself coming out of college is working in corporate communications or financial marketing in the financial services industry. So I was recruited to work for a mutual fund and company, but also investment banking company in Milwaukee called Strong Capital Management. And it was very hard charging, work a lot of hours, they had on-site food, laundry, all the amenities so that you would stay and work. And I remember so the company actually was indicted by the SEC, which is a whole nother fun story, but I ended up coming back to Omaha and still wanting to have a connection to financial services, sought out a Berkshire company. And I remember probably like my first month here or so, I thought I was going to come in early because I wanted to get some work done, and it was Friday, and I was a young 20-something, and I thought, I'll leave early Friday. And I got here about 6:30 in the morning, which wasn't terribly unusual at my previous company to get there. And the doors
the story, Adrian, if I can jump in a second, was, FaceTime was very important at that old company, right? And like, you got to get in early and prove yourself, right? And so go ahead. Yeah.
No, and then it's like, you're there, you got to show up, who's the earliest to come, who's the latest to stay. And I come to Borsheim thinking, I'm going to do that same thing, and I can't get into the building because it's locked. Because it doesn't open until 8 o'clock when security got there to unlock it. And right. I sat there drinking my coffee, waiting outside for a half hour. This is even before smartphones, so I couldn't even work on my phone. But I think that also is a sidebar to show that we really do take a balance, and whether that's a young family balance, if you're caring for aging members of your family balance, wherever your life takes you, Borsheim recognizes you're a fuller person than just your performance at work. That you have a story beyond these walls, and we are interested in knowing about it and supporting you through it. Is my long-winded way of saying it.
Yeah, and what I love about this, what Adrian, you and Karen and everyone else, of course, the Friedman, everybody going back has done here is, this, first of all, let's remember, first of all, this is a very well-run company. You guys are, your numbers are, it's not published publicly, but you have great numbers, and and you also treat your customers really well. Your customers love you because you have really high quality at like the lowest prices anyone's ever seen anywhere in the world. It's really, I love this story, and this story is true among a number of Berkshire companies. And one of the things that you told me, Adrian, that I loved was that you, in addition to the parking lot story, you're like, okay, I guess this is a different culture. But Karen has really worked with you to be okay about asking for help, right? About learning. Say a little bit about that.
Karen is a questioner, and she said that at the beginning, and she's very curious. And I have learned working with her, both as a colleague, but then also now as a direct report of hers, that she will ask lots and lots and lots and lots of questions. And that is not to ever point out that you might be doing something wrong or have an interrogation, but she just truly wants to learn. And I think that act from the top makes it very much okay then for everyone else to ask a lot of questions. There is no pretense to be like, well, I know this, I know what I'm doing. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing. But that it gives you a way to also open the door to be like, hey, I don't fully understand this part of the project or what you're trying to do. Can you help me understand that? Or can I ask you to help me with this particular aspect? I do think Karen's curiosity and her approach to learning really sets a stage that makes it okay for the rest of us to collaborate and to ask those questions as well without a defensiveness that occurs.
And that was a little hard for you at first, right? Like,
really? I'm a super type A, and I'm like, no, I need this answer to be perfect, and everything to be perfect. And then I also think with especially within marketing, how fast and how quickly things change. I have younger colleagues coming in, and I have to be sometimes like, can you take it from the top with me again on what you're doing or what you're asking to do or how this links together? Just so that I can learn too. I now, am not the young one on the block, sadly to say, and this also helps create dialogue with our new associates that come in to understand and support them in what they're doing.
Yeah. This is great. Let me see if there's more questions. I want to encourage, Troy Anderson has a question. Troy, I'm going to bring you in, and this is a question for Karen. Adrian, stay with us here because there may be questions here for you as well. And this is, thank you again for doing this. All right, so Troy, I'm going to unmute you here if I can. Okay. Troy, are you there? Nope. You might not have a, sometimes I do this and I don't warn people and they don't have a microphone on their computer. So I'm going to mute him again. I'll share the question. So relating to something earlier, Karen, Troy was asking, it sounds like, this is his words I'm reading, sounds like Mr. Buffett is trusting all these businesses. Do you ever get feedback that he needs some verification of that trust? Has there ever been a time when he wanted to trust, but to get some verification from you? How does that work?
I think Berkshire does some interesting things. We go through, of course, traditional audits, accounting audits, but they will also come in and do different types of audits. So last year we went through an ethics audit, and they actually brought in a team from Ernst & Young I think they were out of San Francisco, and they spent a week here interviewing everything from frontline associates all the way up through manager levels, and really kind of looked at how our culture supports ethics and what recommendations they would have. And so I think that while there is a level of trust, I also think they're doing a good job of making sure that things are running well, and that they have some resources to check on that. So everything from technology audits to security audits to everything, they kind of take a different approach on how they do it. But I think what they're really sort of doing in between the lines is sort of answering that question, like how are things being run, and are any red flags in any of these areas, and that sometimes can point to red flags, then maybe they'll bring up or questions that they might have related to that.
Right. That's great. I did not know that about the ethics audits, and that's terrific that that's happening. I love that that's happening. And you, of course, every year, Buffett is always interested to see revenue numbers and this kind of thing, right? He just isn't looking to micromanage you or even authorize a budget. I should have mentioned this earlier. So Berkshire Hathaway, about 80 divisions, and when I mean divisions, I mean companies, independent standalone companies like Borsheims, Nebraska Furniture Mart, Geico, etc., Northern Burlington Northern, 365,000 employees across all that. Headquarters for a company of that size, right? I'll say this again in Omaha because it always shocks people. What do you think the headquarters count is, right? So Karen, what is it today? I think he's always a little embarrassed to say he added one more. It's like 26 or something, right? Instead of 25 or 27. It's somewhere in that neighborhood. So that's it's so unusual. They talk about. One of the things Buffett talks about is his philosophy of management is management by abdication. Now it's not, obviously there's he's having some fun with that, but it is closer to that than it is in most other companies. And that trust environment is it's just remarkable and so important for people on the outside.
Right.
Understand.
There's actually probably under 20 people in the Berkshire office. And we are sending financials every month. It isn't like there's no checks and balances. I mean, there is a tremendous amount of reporting that goes in, and we're audited every year. So by an outside firm. So there are, it isn't like it's, you know, free reign across all sectors. I mean, obviously we're running a business. So as long as you're running the business well, then he really doesn't tend to ask too many questions. And if he does have a question, he just calls you up and asks you. So.
Right. No, I love that. I'm trying to think, I want to get a few more people in here, and I'm trying to think like what questions people will have, you know, when we get out to Omaha, and you're going to be so busy. Of course, we're going to try to come over and see you, but we'll be one of 12,000 people eating the meatballs and maybe buying some jewelry. You know, like Colleen Hancock is on the phone, and she'll be with us in Omaha, and she's the COO of one of the divisions of Johnson & Johnson. And, you know, it'd be interesting to hear Baby Center, which is their internet, it was bought by Johnson & Johnson. Let me see if I can unmute Colleen. Are you there, Colleen? No, yeah, I can. Great. Wonderful. So Colleen, what would you like to ask Karen? Or what would you like to comment on?
I'm truly impressed by your taking the time off for the family and coming back in and being so successful. I wish I could have done that as well.
Yeah.
But
It was impressive.
Yeah, but I think one of the things, I mean, Phil knows me pretty well. I'm very much about empowering women and children and girls. And a message like that and how that could happen for more corporations would be something I would love to ask if you think about that, or if Berkshire thinks about pushing that out there to the world more successfully.
You know, I think Warren has, you know, mentioned my path or my time off several times publicly, and I think, you know, he's very bullish on women. He thinks women are underutilized in our country, and he sees great, tremendous growth for the United States if we fully engage and employ women. And I think that is part of it. And you know, what I was talking about earlier about accepting the differences. I mean, women are primarily caregivers. I think it's part of our DNA. And so whether you're stepping aside to care for your children, or you're stepping aside to care for your parents who might be aging or not in a capacity, you know, allowing that to happen and allowing then that return or that re-engagement is way better than bringing somebody in from the outside, you know, cold. And I think if companies can kind of look at it that way, invest in those employees, whether it's that they're, you know, touching base or keeping in contact, I think that it is a great way to, you know, make the most out of your resources. I mean, anything can happen to any of us at any time, and you never know when you are going to have to step away.
Yeah. I have an idea, Karen, to throw out there, and maybe, you know, maybe Colleen can help with this, but it'd be great to get you out to the Bay Area, to Silicon Valley, talking about women-led companies and Borsheims and the customer experience and your passion and your career arc. I also think, given the companies that are going public in the next year, that a lot of those newly minted millionaires should know about, you know, the best and least expensive jewelry in the country available.
Maybe you bring a small suitcase of things.
Yeah, exactly. You can bring some stuff out, but we should follow up with that, Colleen. Let's have a side dialogue about that. I know your passion. And I think Karen her career, her story is so important. And, you know, she's been recognized by a number of women's organizations, but the story is not known in Silicon Valley, and it should be, actually.
Right.
There's a lot Silicon Valley can learn here, in my opinion. Yeah. Thank you, Colleen. So we'll follow up separately on that. we just have a few more minutes, and what a pleasure to spend this time with you, Karen. I can't say enough how much I'm grateful, and I know everyone feels the same way. We have a couple of questions. So one is about marketing mix, and that'll be for Adrian. So why don't we do that second? But first, let's get to a question from Melindy Davies. And Melindy, maybe I can go ahead and open you up here to ask that question directly. Melindy is the COO of the Tamara Melon brand. Let me see if I can unmute you. Melindy, are you there? No, it doesn't look like I can unmute her. Okay, it looks like she doesn't have a mic. Okay, sorry about that. So her question is, Karen, what is a time when things weren't going well for the business, and how did you and Mr. Buffett get through that? Has there been such a time?
I think for us right now, the retail is certainly a challenging environment, and so for us, it's adapting to those changes. So really, I keep stressing about omni-channel really means omni-customer, and really looking at a customer from every angle and how they like to shop. And jewelry is sort of a product that most people, not everybody, likes to see in person. I think we have that advantage, but we also have a lot of online shopping that happens as well. So how do you support that customer in the same way so the experience feels just as fantastic, whether they're doing it through e-commerce or they're in the stores? So how do you marry those two and really make them the same? So I think from that perspective, we're always looking forward and really looking at how we can improve the experience for the customer.
Yeah.
That's center everything kind of around that.
Well, this is we just got Desiree, who we spoke with earlier. Karen just put that she would welcome you there at Airbnb to come give a talk. I really think. So I think we should really explore this, because you have a customer experience story to tell, you've got an ethics story to tell, and you obviously, and very importantly, have a woman's leadership story to tell that I think should be heard in Silicon Valley. And maybe we can work to set something up behind the scenes here to get you out to a few of these companies. I know Colleen would probably feel the same way, and between Colleen and Desiree and several of us, we could make something like that happen. And when we get together in May, one of the things I'll be sharing with the participants is, while it's true that Buffett has famously not invested in a lot of technology, obviously there's a big investment in Apple today, but it's not because he doesn't understand technology. People don't know this. Like, not only is Bill Gates a close friend, but he's known the Intel guys since literally day one. And he understood that Geico needed to invest in technology before Geico understood that e-commerce was going to be critical, right? So it's not that Warren doesn't understand this stuff. It's like thinking about how do you create long-term value, and how do you build, and the very questions that you're struggling with, and thinking about loyalty and customer experience online, which is tough. And Airbnb thinks a lot about this, right? But they have an experience that's obviously not just online, and the team that Desiree works on, they're thinking about, obviously not just the website, but what happens when you're, with the hosts and the experience of both the hosts and the guests in those rooms. So, wow. Okay. So great conversation. And thank you all for dialing in today. Really look forward to seeing you in Omaha. Adrian, if you're okay, I'm going to connect you with the person who had the marketing mix questions. So you guys might do a one-on-one call. And Karen, thank you so much. Any final words from you? Any words of advice on how to be at your first Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting for everyone on the phone here?
There is a lot of exciting things that happen. So from everything, definitely experience the whole convention center, because many of the subs, not all of them, but most of the subs set up a little like pop-up shop inside, so you can kind of get a flavor for all the businesses that Berkshire owns, which I think is really great. We have a great presence down there. We're one of the largest booths down there. So please, if you're not able to make it to the store, say hello there. But we would love to have you out of the store, except when my son is graduating from college on Friday, which happens to happen at the same time as Berkshire this year. I will be at the store and would love to say hello. Adrian will be here for sure. So between the two of us, we'd love to see you.
So people should walk up and introduce themselves, right? Hey, I was on with you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
And
Well,
wear costumes and bring a jacket.
Oh yeah, bring it back. It can get very cold in early May in Omaha, it turns out. Yeah. Well, I can't tell you how much it means to me that you were willing to do this, Karen and Adrian and your whole wonderful team at Borsheims. What a great conversation. Thank you so much. And we look forward to more and with you about some of these ideas. I think that there might be something here. Let's talk. Get you out to the Bay Area. Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you all in May.
See you in
Omaha. Next stop.